Well, here we are on the record, another Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Dave Williams, your host from Find Your New Normal, and I thank you very much for attending. And today's a very special day. As those of you who come every Wednesday afternoon, you know, we talk about all those issues that cancer patients and survivors and caregivers face as they are walking with cancer from the moment of diagnosis through the treatment and post-treatment and into a survivorship and sense of wellness and vitality. So every week we try to casually talk about these issues and bring you resources that are useful to help you on this passage with cancer. And every week, I sort of look at the world through the eyes of a colon cancer survivor and try to connect the dots for you. And I have a very interesting co-host every week. And as those of you who were here last week, you know, somewhere on the screen, I never know where it's going to be placed on the replay. But if you look, you'll see Hayley Dubin beside me, another cancer survivor and a cancer recovery coach. And I'd like to introduce her to you and let Hayley say a few words before we introduce you to our guest for today. Hayley, say hello to our audience.
So hi, everyone. I'm glad you're here. And I work with people who have finished treatment for cancer and have fear around recurrence. And I help them gain confidence that they will remain healthy so they can fully live the vibrant, joyful life that is waiting for them. So I'm excited to hear from our guest, Bill Aron, and let's get started.
It's going to be great. It is so wonderful to have Bill with us. Bill, welcome. You are also a cancer survivor, but you're also a photographer who has written an amazing motivational, inspirational book that we're going to try and share with our audience. And those of you who are watching, don't forget there's a text chat area over on the right-hand side. If you comment over there, Hayley and I will watch your comments and invite you to share your thoughts with Bill. And those of you that have specific questions that you'd like answered, just type /Q, a space, and then your question, and it will show up here on the screen that we can address it directly. We usually talk for a few minutes together with our guest, and then as the conversation unfolds, we invite you to take over the seat, which I'm just going to lock for the moment so it's not confusing. And it'll just be the three of us. So as I say, Bill, thanks very much for coming. And I must thank you. I bought the Kindle edition of your book, and I've got to tell you, I've got so much excitement, so much motivation, particularly as a patient. Well, I guess I'm a survivor, but I'm still in patient mode going through a number of treatments. That book really made a difference, and I'll share that with the audience. But perhaps you, Bill, could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why this book came to you.
Thank you, Dave, and Hayley. It's a pleasure to meet you both. This is the book that I wish had existed when I was diagnosed with cancer. A book with many different cancers so that I could find one or more that I identified with different people from various walks of life, and with enough inspiration so that even I consider myself a cynic at heart, could find something to identify with. I think one of the things that became very clear as I started this project was something that I'm sure both of you have found out, Dave, in your own journey, and Hayley in yours, and now in helping other people, that there really is an unacknowledged phase of cancer. That's the time when treatment's over, when treatment's finished, and you have to go back to living. Let me back up a little bit. When you're first diagnosed, it's like there's fear, there's isolation, there's loneliness. It's like Susan Sontag, the great writer, talks about illness as another country, and you're all of a sudden transported to that other country, and it's got its own customs, its own language, And the two countries, the land of the well and the land of the ill, really don't know how to speak to each other. And so this book, in a sense, attempts to bridge that divide, to bridge the gap, to let people know that getting diagnosed with cancer is not an end. And in fact, it can be a beginning. Many people need help in trying to figure that out. I know I myself had a very gifted therapist, and I'm sure Hayley's come across that in the people that she helps. But it's important to see the future. And really, that's what this book's all about.
And you should let people know that it is not what you might expect. I have I have read a number of survivor stories that have multiple pages of what their journey is all about. And yet, in yours, it's maybe 1 page or 2 pages of copy explaining who the person is, what they faced, what was their reaction. It's like a photograph in words, much like the wonderful photographs you took of each of these people. You now have a snapshot of what that, as you call it, passage to a new beginning. I just love that term. That was just an amazing, because being in Canada, it's the Northwest Passage that the explorers took. And I'm saying, wow, that's true. It's that passage that you're taking from diagnosis to vitality. And you took it by talking to 120 people, capsulating their perspective in a highly motivational way. And in fact, call it the triumphs. I mean, that was just an amazing way of doing it.
When I started out on the project, I didn't know what I'd find. I actually didn't even know if people would be willing to speak to me. And with the first couple people, I found that the interviews, which lasted about 2 hours, were highly cathartic for both of us. Them going through their experience and my finding things in their experience that I identified with. And it created a kind of bond, a sort of relaxed atmosphere between us. And then at the end of the interview, I would explain that I would like to give a visual representation, not an illustration, but a visual representation to how they felt about having gone through this experience. And then we would work out, I would be in charge of the technical aspects, of course, the lighting and angles. But I really left it up to them to find the place and the kind of what they wanted to do in the photograph. One short example, the 2 girls on the cover, Kelly and Megan, this cover, they're jumping in the air. And when we finished the interview, we went out to this nice fountain. It was on the campus of the college they were going to. And they each had very different stories. And they became friends in college before they found out that each was a cancer survivor. So we were speaking for quite a long time. And so I said to them, well, how do you feel? And they both looked at each other. They jumped up on this fountain ledge. They grabbed hands and they just jumped and started screaming. Of course, as a photographer, I made them do it 10 more times, but it was really the first one that was the best expressions. It's hard to reenact the spontaneity of the moment. Sometimes it works, but not often.
I wanted to ask you, the one with Johnny Immerman.
Yeah.
I was curious how that happened, him jumping into a pool.
With Johnny, he has such a inspirational organization, and he's done such good work. I wanted to create. I met him at this house with a swimming pool, and it wasn't his house. It was a couple hours before an event that he was hosting there, and I saw this pool and I said, "How would you like to jump in the water?" And he says, "Okay, I'm game." So I said, "Well, let's get the jumps first. Let's get them right." And so he jumped. He's actually not jumping into the water in that picture that I chose, but he's just jumping in the air, looking at me, and the pool is in the background. I think you see it. Then later I photographed him jumping into the water, and it didn't work as well. So.
Well, there's such a variety of people in the book. I mean, I think you say it's from people 2 years of age to 99. You've got the whole range of ages, and all kinds of types of cancer, from exotic ones to what I would have considered ones that were deadly. Some people had years of surgeries and interventions, and yet at the end of every story, there's a motivational comment. It just overwhelmed me as I was going through them, because they're so short. You can just quickly scan through, and you come to the end. You hear the story, you hear what they went through, and then there's this motivational comment of how they're viewing the world. And yeah, it's like all of us. Yeah, we've gone through something and we're better for it, and cancer's a gift. We hear those kind of things that many of us all acknowledge, but it's even more. What were some of the things that jumped out at you that, as a survivor yourself, that caught you off guard from what these people were actually sensing cancer did for them?
Well, people, for the gift idea, many of them remarked that cancer is not really a gift, but it's an opportunity. Like most changes in life, you go to college, it's an opportunity to do well, to gain experience, to learn a trade. And for me, the essential element is coming to terms with one's own mortality. I think when that happens, something fundamental changes inside. I think there are a couple things in life. I think people who marry are different in that way than people who don't marry. People who have children are different than people who don't have children. And I'm not placing any kind of value judgment on having or not having, but it changes you fundamentally. And I think when you learn that our days really are numbered, that causes a change in life. Some people go through it and they say, it was a problem. I had surgery, I took care of it, and I'm fine now. Okay, that's fine. But other people really take it inside and they say, well, I'm not going to live forever. The wife of the evangelist, Rick Warren, his wife said to me, I learned that I have no control over how long I live, but I do have control over how I live. That, I think, is a very important lesson, that we can control what happens. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react after, everybody has an initial reaction. I mean, it took me years to get over this sense of loneliness and feeling just totally alone in the universe. But then, as I said, it becomes an opportunity.
And what do you find is, with all of these people you interviewed, what's the one commonality? I mean, of course, except the fact that they had cancer. Well,
I think the commonality is, with a couple of exceptions, that each day is a day meant to be appreciated and not taken for granted. Now that's a thought, I think, that can guide us to great things in our lives. It's not one you can maintain every single day, but as long as you have that and it's in the background, then I think that can motivate you to be a better person. People would reify that. They would express that in different ways. Some people were willing, even eager, to change their lives. Some changed their careers. Some changed their partners. Some reordered priorities. Some reaffirmed that the path they were on was the right path for them. They altered diets, took up exercise, explored ways to give back by raising money or starting a cancer survivor organization or working for one. So there was a whole lot. There were many different ways that expressed itself. But I think another way to say it was that they really wanted their lives to mean something.
Yeah.
Confronted their mortality. I know that's true with me. I confronted my mortality. I had two photography books out that were good. I liked them. They were about subjects that people weren't really focusing on. But in the end, I thought that I really wanted to produce something that was of worth to other people other than interesting things to look at.
Yeah.
There was a recognition, as you say, that life can be brief, that life can be fragile, and that you've got to make every day count, and that you have a level of power. You are so powerful that you can actually impact and change other people's lives.
I think that sense of power is very important. I had a very close friend, we were talking about my experiences one day, and he said, I don't wish to have cancer, but I wish something would happen that would make me take those steps in my life to make certain changes that I think about. So he has the power, but he hasn't hooked up with it. I mean, we all have I didn't mean him specifically.
No,
we all have that power. But it's sometimes difficult to act upon. And people like Hayley's new occupation help us to connect up with that. I know my therapist did.
Yeah.
Well, there are these emotional issues, and Hayley and I were talking about being lost in the transition from patient to survivorship last week as a setup to having you on today and what you learned by talking to people. And one of the things that struck me today, because I like to center and focus and get the monkey chatter out of my brain, I meditate every day. And I found one of the quotes that just jumped out at me in the book today was, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain.
Yeah, Bill.
And boy, did that ever set my mind with a vision that I could just get right into my meditation practice today. It was, the book, folks, is really like that. It's so easy to go through, and you can speed read it, scan through it, and then you go back, and then you find all of these inspirational quotes. Bill, what would be useful is for you to go through those and highlight the motivational triumphant quote and make that a PDF on its own. Because I would like to have access to that, because I'm going to do that. It's unfortunate I'm on the Kindle. I got to get the printed book that I can slash it up, because I think I'd like to have my daily meditation around one of these triumphant quotes. So, and that could be an extra appendix in your next edition of the book, is saying, here's the summary of the triumph that these survivors had, and do what you will with it. And I know it, as I say, it is an amazing motivational, because all of us, and we talked about that last week, is that we do have bad days. Even if you've been 18 years cancer free, you can still loop into some negativity, and you need to draw yourself up. And so we've been taught about deep breathing. We've been taught about meditation. We've got MBSR therapy. We've got all these techniques. But to have something as simple as yours blew me away. Open the book. In fact, as you mentioned to me on our earlier session, it should be in the lounge area of every doctor's office, every oncologist's office, that it's there, that people can go through it. It should be in the hands of every cancer coach, that they can use it as an inspiration to help you see where your perspective is. Today, my nurse came in, checked me over, and I was making it so clear that it was because of my perspective compared to other people in your book. I saw where I was, and they made it through things that were worse than me, and others had a journey easier than me. But it made me feel part of the group. I wasn't alone. I was with them. Right. I knew where my power was. It was so uplifting. I really thank you, Bill. That's an amazing ability your book had for me the last 2 days. Just really special.
People in the book discovered all sorts of things about themselves. There's this one family that was just sent. I walked in and the house was bedlam, and I thought, oh, I'm not going to get anything out of here. And they were the parents of a young boy who had a very advanced case of Ewing sarcoma. He was 3 when he was diagnosed. I saw him about 2 years after his treatment ended. And the mother, let me just read this because I think it's an example of how people can discover things in themselves and then act on it. Part of that power we were talking about. His mother told me, we are not a religious family. We were not a religious family. So it shocked me one day in the hospital when Robert started talking to God. He told me that God, was in the room. I was afraid to leave him for fear that God was going to take him. I was petrified. Eventually, I took comfort in knowing that if it was God in the room, as a friend told me, that God, was there so that I could step away. Robert asked me to take him to the hospital chapel so he could pray. He knelt down and said, God, please take this cancer out of me and make my mommy happy again. From then on, no one will ever be able to tell me that God does not exist. Believe it or not, Doyle, her husband, and I eventually became Sunday school teachers. Wow. So it's a little longer story, but I was so blown away by this incredibly lucid and informed statement about their own lives. I mean, it almost doesn't matter the issue of whether God exists or not. What matters is that this experience brought them to a more meaningful place in their lives.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I see we've got some of our friends in the audience that are asking to join us. Let me unlock the seat, see if anyone's ready to come on camera. And I've opened it up. You can see a call-in area. Just click on that area. It'll connect your webcam and your microphone and ask your questions to Bill. I know Beth is here, and she's been interviewing cancer survivors, so I bet she's got a couple of questions that she'd like. In fact, there she is. So let's see if we can get Beth online here to join us.
There she comes.
Here she comes. Let's see if she connects in. And there she is. Hi, Beth.
Hi. Hi.
Say hello to Bill and tell the audience who you are, because some people are new today and may not recognize you.
I have known Dave now for just a few months, getting acquainted when you were doing the Google Hangouts. And
yeah, I think it was last spring. We're getting close to a year now.
Yeah. So I'm not a technical person. In fact, it took me 10 minutes to get onto the Blab site today. But I have so many questions for you, Bill. How did you find 120 people? I'm challenged. I have a goal of 50. And some of the people who said they're interested don't follow through, and I have to recontact them and so forth. And I'm just curious to know, how did you get to that large number, and how long did it take you? How did you find people?
Well, I knew people in my community, and I started with them. And then in the meantime, I was doing research online, and I found this wonderful group called Planet Cancer for people who have been diagnosed, people who are under 40 that have been diagnosed with cancer. And I read through the bios and I followed the conversations. For all I'm obviously over 40, so I wasn't trying to usurp a position there or anything. And then I would there was a way to contact the people. And so I'd contact them, people I thought were appropriate and people that lived in places where I could get to, and wrote a little paragraph about what I was doing and asked if they would participate. And I was shocked that more than 90% of the people that I contacted said, yes, they'd love to participate. One woman told me, said, I'm so glad you asked. Said, I'm not famous. Like, there are many celebrities who have become sort of cancer survivors extraordinaire. Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm not famous, but I do have a story to tell that I think people would like to hear. And I think part of that wanting to tell their story is wanting to make their lives mean something, because they had experiences that they wanted to articulate that they thought would help other people. And then along the way, I was busy with them, and along the way, I got friendly with a Dr. Sender, who at that time was the chief of pediatric oncology at the Children's Hospital in Orange County. And he was just wonderful. I mean, with permission, he would introduce me to families of young children who had been diagnosed, because that's a huge, huge area. Mm-hmm. And by that time, people began hearing about the project, and they began contacting me. There were certain people who are well known in the community, like your friend Hayley, Johnny Immerman, that I wanted to make sure were definitely in the book. And so I reached 100, which was my goal. And I told the publisher that I'd like a little more time, because there were some other people that I thought should be included. And they said, okay, take a couple of months. So then my editor called me up one day and said, by my count, you have 120 people. I think it's time to stop. I still have a folder of people that I could have continued the project almost indefinitely, because people began hearing about the project, and they began contacting me, friends of people who had already been interviewed. And the things that I tried to bear in mind were getting a variety of cancers, a variety of ages, and in photographing, making sure that every photograph didn't look like every other photograph. Right. Okay. Lighting and expressions and actions and things like that.
How long of a time did it take to do 120 interviews? I
started in 2006. And I finished in the fall of 2015.
Wow.
So I couldn't work on it solidly because I have a photography business to run. So I would sort of go in fits and starts, not every day, but I'd say, okay, next week's not too busy, I'll do a couple of shoots there.
And did you find that people were more willing to be interviewed when there had been some time that had passed since their treatments, so they had some time between to kind of regroup, or did it make any difference?
I think that was varied. There's one person that I remember who said no because they were still too close to it. In fact, she lives across the street from me, and I really wanted to include her, but the book finished before she was ready. Mm-hmm. And then there were a couple people in the book who were still in treatment. So it varied widely. I really think it meant the difference was coming to terms with this major change that happened in their lives. Mm-hmm. And if they had, and they were ready. If it was still a trauma for them, then they weren't ready to talk about it.
Right.
And I respect that.
Well, 8 years ago, life was very different for cancer patients in terms of treatment programs, medical intervention, and so forth. Over the 8 years, as cancer progressed in terms of its sophistication, did you sense the stories at all changed? I'm wondering if people 8 years ago really were more fearful of the intervention and the potential for death, where those that maybe in 2014 had more hope because of, the treatment processes were saving more people in the last 5 years than they ever did before.
In the culture in general, I really haven't noticed that difference. I mean, I think that's a good point, that it really is changing. In fact, Jane Brody, who's the personal health columnist in the New York Times, she wrote in the introduction, if I can find it, no one is immune. No, sorry. Sorry. But anyway, she talked about she talks about the issue that more and more people are surviving, and so it's important to learn how. And I don't. Among the people that I interviewed, I think that when you're diagnosed, cancer is still in our culture such a fearful word. I think that punch in the stomach is still very visceral and very real. Most of the people who have said, well, there's a lot of treatments now that there weren't, I find are not people who have been diagnosed with cancer. But because I think that gripping fear is just too overwhelming. And
there was an interesting article, I think, last week in Huffington Post about should we redefine the paradigm of cancer, because you hear that word cancer and that equates to I'm going to die. I know I certainly felt that when I began. But now they're saying because so many people are surviving, maybe we've got to teach people that it's more likely that you're going to live than you're going to die. Yeah. And so, as you say, it's a question of how will you live your new normal? How will you go on the passage from where you are to find that new normal, to find your new beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I argue for is that we should acknowledge that there's this additional phase to cancer. There's diagnosis in the beginning, and then there's treatment decision and then treatment. But post-treatment is a real phase and needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
That's where things do seem to drop off, even today.
Yeah, one person in the book called it the silent phase of cancer, because when you're in treatment, you've got all this stuff going on, doctor's appointments, treatment appointments. The phone's always ringing by friends, calling up to find out how you are. And then all of a sudden it stops. And everybody, including the survivor, expects their lives to go back to normal, when in fact it can't.
Yeah.
I learned the hard way that phrase of be careful what you wish for. I mean, in the treatment program, every weekend I was just swamped with people coming over with coffee and goodwill and tidings. And I'm saying, I'm exhausted. I can't do this. Wish they would all go away. And then a couple of months later, I was told, hey, Dave, you're cancer free. Move on. You're a survivor. And all my friends said, well, fine, he's a survivor. We don't have to go and visit anymore. And as you said at the beginning of your comment, you're alone. Everything is fallen apart. Your whole rhythm for nearly 3 years, or two and a half years, I was into this process, and then it disappeared within 2 weeks. Gone.
Right.
Poof.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why it's so important to have a support system afterwards.
Yes.
No question.
A support system, or somebody who is trained and knows what the problems are. Not necessarily how to get over the problems, but how to help you work through them.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about one other story that struck me. I think it was Sophia. She was 15 months old at the time. And I think it was her father that was talking about, them seeing gifts that other people don't see. Yeah. And I think that's so true. Just smelling her hair, the shampoo in her hair and that kind of stuff.
She's one of the little girls that when I saw it just broke my heart. When I saw, this little girl had cancer. She was so cute. And such a big smile. But one of her parents said, life is about moments. We have started to live day by day, hour by hour, and sometimes second by second. This is a girl who had a very rare form of cancer, and it's one that is often diagnosed posthumously. And that they were told by their physicians that if even 2 weeks later, if they had discovered it even 2 weeks later, it would have been too late to save her. Wow. I can't even pronounce the name of this disease. When you sit there and those seconds seemingly so long, you realize how many of them you have. We have the luxury of seeing so many little gifts that other people don't see. The smell of my daughter's hair in the morning is one such gift. My favorite daily gift is getting to snuggle with her in the morning.
I love that. Beautiful.
I think that one of the stories that moves me particularly is one of a teenager. This girl, Chelsea Kaufman, she was 15 when she was diagnosed with germ cell teratoma, which was rare and quite lethal. And she had to be in the hospital for 3 weeks. And I mean, I had seen her, I think, a year and a half after she was pronounced in remission. And what she said was moving, but what her friend said was incredibly, what her friend said is kind of a prescription of how to treat someone close to you that has been diagnosed with cancer. She has 6 friends, and she was in high school, and every day after school, they would take all their books and they would go to Chelsea's hospital room. She was in the hospital for 3 months, and they would sit and do homework and laugh and do what girls do. And Chelsea would participate the best they could, but they kept her company. And I got them all together, and I couldn't sort out who said what, but my summary of what they said was, we were all so young and never thought about anything like this. So we took advantage of it and treasured our friendships. We realized the importance of our time together. Emotionally, it was scary, but at the same time, it was incredible how it made all of us so much closer. People can fight and get through it. No one deserves it, but she showed us how to be strong. Chelsea is our hero. And I fell off these girls were so articulate and so outstanding in their love for each other. That, it's moving to me. Very moving.
I just feel the hair on the back of my neck.
Oh, for sure. I have goosebumps.
Man, I just looked at the clock and we're whipping by the time. I can't believe it. Those of you in the audience who want to come on air and talk to Bill, just signal in the text chat so that I know you want to come on, and we'll make space for you and get you in before we close out. Because, as I say, time is moving right along here. It's an amazing
Shall
hour.
I sign off?
Well, not yet. Let's just see if anybody wants to come on camera. If not, it'll just be up.
While we're waiting, I'll tell you, some people went the other way and told just funny stories. There was David Wolpe told me that during his chemo, when he had lost his hair, he was walking down the street and this guy came up to him and said, I know just how you feel. And David expected a profession of sympathy. And he says, I was a stunt double for Patrick Swayze in a movie. Not Patrick Swayze. I ruined the whole joke. Patrick Stewart, who's bald, of course, in the movie. So, okay.
No, that's funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of humorous stories, and I mean, Beth Goldsmith just blew me away.
Yeah.
I mean, the journey that she had, and yet the vitality in her words. I mean, it was. And it was an horrific. And those of you that are watching the replay, make sure that you get the book so that you see what we're talking about, because you can identify with various activities. I mean, even though the stories are short, there's something in there that makes you immediately connect with them. For instance, Beth was saying she was on TPN for 6 days. She was liquid food through her PICC line. Well, I know what that was like. I had TPN for 6 weeks, and that was just unbelievable. And So you as a survivor know what those interventions are that these people have gone through, and you immediately connect in these, like 5 paragraphs. I mean, it's not pages, it's just very short copy, and you're right there. And then it ends on this up note because you're listening to Beth and the journey and how she was losing organ after organ and intervention after intervention. And yet at the end, you're saying, how can she be that positive?
She's amazing. She also told a very funny story. Our local NPR station out here is KPCC. So
yes, that's the one. Yeah, I love that story.
She came out of surgery and she says to her husband, "I want KCC," because she couldn't talk. How you are after surgery. And her husband said, "KCC, Kentucky Fried," or KFC, he heard.
KFC?
Kentucky Fried Chicken. And
never seen her ever eat that before in her life.
So it's finally the daughter that figured out this woman was a KPCC, an NPR nut. She listened to it all day long, and in the background. And so our daughter finally figured, she wants to listen to KPCC. So
that's great. Now, Bill, would you say it was extremely healing for you doing this book, or did it bring some raw emotions? I mean, it's probably a little of everything.
Well, you're right. It was a little of everything. I consider all these people my teachers. Every person thought about the issues in a slightly different way. And in talking with them, they helped me to think about the issues in a clarifying way. And so they're all my teachers. Whoops, we just lost you, Hayley.
She'll probably come back.
Yeah. Okay.
No, she's there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the lessons, which is probably the most profound lesson in the book, is a woman named Anel Tellez, who said, after cancer, everything else now is going to be a piece of cake. That, if you can think that, then life takes on a whole different atmosphere for you and a whole different sort of modus operandi.
It really does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quality of life.
In fact, Bill, it looks like you have one of your interviewees in the office, Schiffman 22, wrote 2 pages about him.
Yes. Spencer's story was very long and difficult. And he was just an incredibly optimistic human being, and was through things that I don't even want to contemplate. But he's chucking along and doing well.
He's a 3-time survivor, he says.
Yes.
Wow.
I was going to
powerful people that you got to interview.
The other thing that people talked about were angels.
Yes, that's another good point. Yes.
And it's something that, I never really thought about. But it makes so much sense to me that angels, not the celestial kind up in the sky, but the kind of people that help you through difficult times, that when life is at its worst, someone comes along and they help you through it. And give you the courage to go on. In fact, Ed Feinstein said that he talked about this concept of angels and people that had helped me. And he said that he now feels that the goal of life is to become someone else's angel.
Yes.
I think I think that's terrific. And other people talked about angels too. And that's one of the ways in which people explored giving back to become someone else's angel.
It is a surprising event when angels arrive. I mean, it's not something I ever experienced in my life until cancer care. And that was suddenly something I had to adapt to. There were so many caring people who were there to help me.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a job. I mean, I had some oncology people that, I was just a chart number, but there are other people that were there because they really wanted to make a difference. As you said, their purpose in life was to be an angel to someone else. And they surrounded you and you felt their energy and it helped you on the recovery path. And, that's why everyone knows I started these shows, a year and a half ago so that I could pay it forward. There were 3 angels who came to me that without them, I don't think I could have got through the process. And they made such a difference on me that I just had to pay it forward. I had to do something that would make a difference to somebody else's life. It's a very strange concept of how I could live life so long and never experience that. But in a life crisis, there they are. They surround you, care for you. They put their arm around you and move you forward. It's an amazing thing.
Tiffany Grayley in the book talks about how one day she was just feeling terrible. She had an awful headache, and she was convinced that her cancer had gone to her brain, and she now had a brain tumor. And she said this beautiful young woman who was also in treatment came over and sat down next to her and held her hand and just talked to her calmly. And she said that totally calmed her down and helped her through this difficult period she was going. And Tiffany she has this wonderful description of this woman as being so beautiful. And she just felt like crap. And, no makeup, her hair was messed up. And she said from that point on, these 2 people, she and this newfound friend of hers would go to treatment at the same time and would always sit next to each other and be with each other. And towards the end of treatment, this woman died. And Tiffany was so distraught that she felt, why would God take this young woman who was so good and kind and outgoing and leave me alive? And her, over time, her conclusion became that this woman was her angel and that she now had to become other people's angel, and that was her mission in life.
So beautiful.
As Spencer just wrote in the text chat, never give up. There's always hope. That's his motto. Having been saved by golf. So those golf fanatics out there, you can find a way of moving forward with golf.
It's,
that's what makes the world so interesting, because everybody deals with their issues so differently, and different things inspire us. Keeps things really interesting, the whole journey.
Yeah, a lot's been written recently about there's a certain kind of meditation where you focus on something. It can be a mantra, it can be a thought, it can be an inspirational quote. I forget the name of it, but it can be golf. It can be what makes you totally concentrate with all your being. And that can be very beneficial to, if not the immune system, then certainly to one's well-being.
Well, I mean, the lightness is so important. This week, the Chopra Meditation series is all about getting rid of the weight and being light. And today's message was really about finding that image that you're talking about and concentrating on it and being calm and letting the energy flow, be in the flow of the energy. And your visualization is helping you control the negative energy and the positive energy to get you calm and to move it forward. And they're not just mind tricks. I mean, these things, as all of us probably on the show acknowledge, these are good things to do that you have to learn to do. And it's not just treatment program. I mean, survivors, some of us, have been at this for years and years and years and years, and you still have issues where these techniques come in. And even if you're a 20-year survivor, Bill's book is going to make a difference in your life. I'm telling you, I've typed his address, the book's address on Amazon in the side. I'm going to put it in there again just because we're getting a lot of text chat, but I'll put the Amazon book in there so that everyone knows where to get it. And profits are going to cancer societies and organizations.
Yes.
It's not all into, this is not a money-making project for Bill. There's a lot of motivation behind it, as you can tell, talking to Bill. But that book is, well worth the hard copy or the Kindle. Unfortunately, due to glasses, I best read on Kindle. So I can adjust the type size and the coloring and so on. I can get at it instantly. You can get into it, and as I say, integrate it into your daily meditation.
Right.
And I think it's great for people who, maybe just finished with treatment and they don't want to talk about everything with someone. Just to see these stories can make them feel that they're not alone. So I think it's such a great gift that you've given to people, Bill.
Thank you.
We're getting close to the hour. Any final comments you want to make, Bill?
One of the other things that I found that existed in a lot of people was a real determination not to give in. I'm going to keep kicking cancer's ass is one way. Today I love everything, the trees, the flowers, even people who give me the finger. Another fellow, cancer, he had stage 4 cancer. He said, cancer pulled my head right out of my ass. It made me wake up because stage 4 is not just stage 4. There is no stage 5. If I'm going down, I thought I'm not going down without a fight. So there's this strength, inner strength, determination of will. Not in everybody, but a number of people did express it. And I found that very moving. I don't think I had ever thought about anything like that in my life before. That with that kind of, bringing up strength from inside and saying, no, I'm not going to let this defeat me.
Now, Bill, have you kept in touch with any of these people?
I have. There's some people that I just couldn't let go of. The teenager, Chelsea, she's now at USC studying to be a physician's assistant. She was helped by, in her school, there was a medical doctor who, because of cancer, gave up his practice and began teaching math to high school kids, which is what he really wanted to do. And he would go over her house every night when she got out of the hospital and help her with the lessons of every subject. And at the end of that semester, she had missed like 3 or 5 months of school. She got all A's because of his help. And so being someone who helps other people like that was very important to her. There are a couple of people that I have stayed close to, and I wouldn't give up for anything. Chelsea's certainly one of them.
So great.
Well, let's just have our final comments from each of us, and then we can go off camera and maybe hang around for a little bit longer, answering questions and carrying the conversation on. But Beth, any final comments or comments you'd like to make to Bill?
I just have so many questions. I could be peppering you.
Well, get your email there or your website so the two of you can talk to each other off.
Get in touch. Get in touch.
Okay, I will.
And we could continue the conversation if on my website, Bill Aron. Aron has 1 A. There's a contact page, and then I'll send back from my email, and you can then have that. There's a woman that made a comment on the left side of the page, said, "Missed the beginning. Can you show the book again?" Am I allowed to do that?
Well, of course, and we're going to play the video again. That's it.
New beginnings.
There's the beginning book, and we've got the Amazon link on the side.
Thank you. Great. Oh, I like Joe Pesci says, by Spencer was friends with Joe Pesci, the actor.
Oh, wow.
Who helped him a lot. And he says, PHUCK cancer.
There you go. That's a joke. Right. A big T-shirt. And Hayley, any closing comments?
Well, I'm just appreciative of this time. It was so inspiring just to hear the stories out of your mouth. I know I can't wait to see the hard copy. I have seen the Kindle edition, but I like to hold it in my hand. And thank you. And I'm going to definitely recommend this to my clients. And I'm just very happy to met you, and I'm so glad you found me on LinkedIn. Technology
is good for something.
Bill, you were really kind to share your time with us, and you made an impact on Spencer. You can see his comment.
Spencer's terrific person.
You know, you were a very special person to interview him, and he will always appreciate that. And I know I am impressed with your book, even though I've only known you a short time. It has an instant impact on my life. So I'm very grateful for your writing, and I'm super pleased that you were able to spend the time with us today.
Thank you.
So
one more quote.
Yes, please.
By a woman who became a writer because of her cancer experience. She figured out what she really wanted to do was write. She said, life is about joy, about living our soul's purpose, about contributing to the greater good. I live every moment with that in mind.
Contributing to the greater good.
Rebecca.
Yes.
We've got to get some of your interviewees on the show and talk to them. Get Spencer on. Find us a group of people to come on to the show. We would love to meet them and talk to them and be part of our community. Because as you can tell, this is a pretty informal gathering. It's just having a cup of coffee and chatting about what's important to all of us as survivors. So we're not alone. It's a very odd journey, or I like this now, passage to a new beginning that we are all on. And
I think that would be great.
Please do introduce them to us, and we'll bring them on. Every Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, they can join in on whoever we're speaking to. Next week, we've got Dr. Nikki Barr coming on to talk to us about getting off the emotional roller coaster. And she's had a paradigm shift going on. She now has a new way of looking at riding the roller coaster and successive roller coasters that we as survivors must ride. So we're going to be talking about her book and her new thoughts on what does it really mean to deal with this emotion that Bill has been been sharing with us today. So next week's show will be continuation of our passage to a new beginning. I'm stealing your phrase, Bill. I'm sorry.
Please.
It's such a good one.
Hashtag new beginnings.
Hashtag new beginnings. Well, our co-host Gina Costa-Golfar used to have her site is New Beginnings with Gina. That she was always talking about that, and where I'm talking about finding your new normal. Now we're connected them together of being on the passage. So this is just I love how the show is all connecting together. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So let me think.
I just have one more question, Bill. I'm just curious what your next project is. Do you have that in mind, or?
I did. I do have one that is still in the very formative stages. And I did promise the publisher I would give this book a year to 15 months and really devote myself to getting it out and letting people know. So it's not going to happen until after that. But one of the things that I'm struck with is the growing number. I think one of the problems of the world is the separation of people, white people, black people, Jewish people, Christian people, Muslim people. And it seems to me there are growing numbers of people who cross those boundaries, gay people, straight people. And I would like to do something with interviewing and photographing people that have done that. Not quite sure. I think I tentatively in my mind calling it the misunderstood.
That's going to be another great project. You had so many great projects. When you visit Bill's site, you'll see his other books, the journey he's been on. He's a very special person making a difference in the world. And I'm glad Hayley introduced me to him. And now I'm really pleased to have met you, Bill.
Well, it's a pleasure meeting both of you.
It's been great having you. And again, let's go off the air. We'll carry on the conversation afterwards, but I'll hit the off air button so that we can close it out so the replay will be manageable. And for those of you that are still there, we're going to play the book trailer again as soon as I go off the air, because it doesn't get recorded, we discovered. So we might as well just play it to the live audience that's here. It's a really good trailer. So again, thank you all in the audience for spending time with us today. I hope you come back next Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll be meeting Dr. Nikki Barr and talking about getting off the emotional roller coaster. So thanks again. See you next week.
Thank you.
My pleasure.